Here's my vintage toy store on eBay and what's sold, episode 2. I am Joshua Tatsui and I run a vintage toy store on eBay. I buy vintage toy collections and go to estate sales and garage sales and buy storage auctions anywhere that I can find super awesome vintage toys. I can't keep everything I find, and that is why I run a vintage toy store, so I can sell and make accessible all the cool finds that I come across. And now I am also creating a YouTube channel to show all the vintage toys that I sell. On this episode, I'm going to be sharing a little bit of what sold last weekend and this weekend because I was out of town last weekend in Cali. I do like to share a cool thing that I've come across that not necessarily sold, but would like to show you. This is the 29th annual Grammy Awards behind the scenes rundown and outline of the show. This one is signed by Billy Crystal, who was the host of it that year. It's very cool. It will be sold on the eBay store. A very cool edition. Not something you come across very often. And now the exciting part of what's sold. Up first is an F.A.O. Schwartz toys catalog from 1953. It's not in perfect condition, but it is in legible condition. Before they had the internet, this is how you saw what you wanted for Christmas and the different toys that were in the store. It is very cool. It is 70 years old. 1953 was 70 years ago. It sold for $60. It's a very, very unique item that also fits perfectly with my vintage toy store. Up next is a Call of Duty 3 from the Xbox 360. Came out in 2006. It is sealed, which is very cool for a 2006 game. I'm actually a huge fan of Call of Duty. I grew up with it, playing MW2 with all my friends. Up next is a DVD, The Glass Slipper. This was filmed in 1955. I've never watched it, just a sealed old DVD. Last week, a Batman animated series collection sold. It was 16 discs. It was seasons 1 through 4. A very cool set. Last week, another very cool set of action figures sold. One buyer bought 5 different action figures. One of the action figures was a Shazam. It was an 8-inch retro action DC comic book figure. It has the cloth clothes like Amigo. A very cool remake made to look like the old style figures. The second figure they bought was a very unique action figure. It was a Hero of the American Revolution historical figure of Ben Franklin. So not a very common action figure. The third figure was a Diamond Select Star Trek Gorn figure. He's another 8-inch clothed like the original Mego figures. Again, the fourth figure is a Mego style 8-inch The Munsters Grandpa. The last figure they purchased was a Dalek. It was a Doctor Who classic Dalek figure from Genesis of the Daleks, Wave 3, Series 7. All 5 of these figures actually came from the storage unit, and I don't know the collector, but the collector that previously owned these loved vintage action figures, vintage models. I have a bunch of Megos from that storage unit, as well as Horror Aurora's models that were professionally painted. All came from the same unit. A great unit, super cool stuff that fit the store perfectly. Also sold last week that is unique for my toy store is 4 vintage British lead toy figures. These ones are Lancers. I do not believe they're in perfect condition, but as you can see here, they're very miniature, but very old. Also sold last week was a 1/18th Nissan made by Hot Wheels and a 1/24th Maisto Ford Mustang GT. I like the Mustangs. My first car was a 1989 Fox Body Mustang 5.0. Very cool car. Up next is a Justice League 3000 graphic novel, paperback. Very colorful, glossy. It's part of the New 52 series. Up next is a more unique graphic novel. This one is the Savage Dragon. It is again a paperback, all colored inside. A more unique set. Not something you see as often. Up next is again another unique on the fringe of comic book collectors made by Jaime Hernandez, Maggie the Mechanic, a Love and Rockets book. A Love and Rockets is the series. There's like maybe 5 or 6 of these that I have for sale. I really was not sure how well this would sell. There's maybe 5 or 6 of these listed on eBay. I had no idea if it was going to sell or not. It is black and white inside. But again, bought from a comic book collector. He knew his stuff, had his unique tastes, and something I've never seen before. But very cool. Cool art. Up next is something that is not a vintage toy, but something that I find very cool. It is a mid-century modern starburst or sunburst clock. All these sunbursts are metal pieces sticking out. There's a clock in the middle that still works. It went for $75. I do believe this one was a repop. It's not an actual vintage one. That is why it sold for $75. Usually these clocks in great condition can go for hundreds and hundreds of dollars because they are very unique. Up next is a 2002 G.I. Joe Search for the Yeti action figure. This one was maybe 12 inches. I bought it with a huge collection of G.I. Joe action figures, all from the 80s and 90s, and this was one of the more unique ones. It has the fur on it. The fur was a little bit dirty, but this set went for $48.95. Up next is a 1968 Little Kittle's Sweethearts storybook, Maid Marian. A very small, tiny figure that comes in a perfume bottle. Up next is a Rokenbach pneumatic Downovator. Comes with the manual. It is working. This takes a vehicle, a Rokenbach vehicle, from the ground floor up to whatever ramp is up here. These are the support blocks that kind of hold everything together. Right here is a little picture of it in the manual. Probably mid-2000s toy. Up next is a Lego Mysterio minifigure. This one is pretty mint. The cape is still in this little box. This is from the Spider-Man Far From Home set. It is number 76129. Went for $11, just this little figure. Up next, even though Halloween was 2 weeks ago, an Iron Man costume sold about $15. This one is a kid's costume. Who doesn't love dressing up as Iron Man? This one has a puffy vest, pretty cool set. And the mask opens up. Up next is a sealed 2006 World Series baseball made by Rawlings. Still sealed in a little case. Went for $30. And now we're going to move on to trains. This year happened to be a huge train year, so I have sold a lot of trains. I also wanted to share one train that sold last week. It is a $1,300 HO scale Hallmark Super Crown Santa Fe locomotive. Extremely rare. It hasn't necessarily gone up in value since it was originally like retail value. It is just very rare, very high tier of model trains. Obviously $1,300. Crazy for a model train. Super detailed, super well made. Up next we have two Katos, both in box, A and B locomotives. One is a Santa Fe F7 A and B. The other one is a PA PB Union Pacific. Very nice, barely used, if not new. Another Kato, a Union Pacific FEF3 steam locomotive. It has a steam front engine and then also the coal engine in the back. Very cool set. Kato brand, very nice Japanese made brand. Up next is a simple N scale boxcar. This one is a Southern Pacific overnight boxcar. Up next we have three lifelike E6A locomotives. These two are Chicago and Northwestern lines. This one is a Union Pacific line. All yellow. I actually had trouble finding it in my storage because they all look so similar. Hundreds of trains. As organized as I am, the only thing that differentiates a lot of these trains is the numbers on the box and the small numbers and the details on the trains. They all look alike, but very detailed, very ornate cars. Union Pacific specifically is yellow and very, very common. Up next is an Atlas locomotive order. This order had 7 Atlas locomotives, totaling an order of $600. These are all Union Pacifics, 2 GP35s. Again, the only difference is the numbers on the cars. And then 5 GP7 Union Pacific locomotives, all by Atlas. Again, the only differences are the numbers inscribed on the trains. Some of them are no number models, which just haven't been added yet. Up next, we have a Broadway limited imports N scale Alco PA Santa Fe 54 L. I've sold a lot of Broadway imports. They do have the coolest looking boxes. What's very interesting about this train is that in 2006, this retailed at $230. This one just sold for $120. Most of the trains that I sell do go up in value. Not always the case, as is with this one, but the rarity, the collectivity of the individual specifics of the cars make them rare and sought after. This one, for whatever reason, has not gone up in value or even maintained its value. Up next, we have a set made by Intermountain. This is an F7A, F7B locomotive set. These are Santa Fe's, and they are known as the Cat Whisker set. These trains have gone up in value. This set sold for $250. Up next, I have two Proto 2000 series. It is actually made by Lifelike. It is just a different line of the series. These are two GP7 locomotives, HO scale. These are the CNW Chicago Northwestern lines, and they are sold as a set. This is numbered 1519. This one's numbered 1518. Great set, went for $140. And lastly, this came in the storage unit I bought maybe 2 weeks ago. It is a Martin guitar. It is a mahogany jumbo, a very rare Martin guitar. Martin, if you do not know, Martin & Co. is a very, very high tier guitar. This is an acoustic. It is a jumbo. It is from 2000. They have serial numbers up here on the head, too hard to show on camera, that show the exact year it was made and kind of the authenticity of it. Very rare, went for $960. I put it on auction because this is a rare guitar. It actually does not sell very often on eBay, and so there's not a lot of history on this guitar for sold history. So I put it on auction. I expected to get $600 to $800 on the auction for sure, and depending on the actual rarity and the desirability of this guitar, I thought it could go up to $1,200 to $1,500. It ended up going right in the middle, which is perfect, at $960. Very cool. It is in excellent condition. I'm no musician. Don't know if it's tuned. Thank you for watching and sharing my passion of vintage toys with me. If you like this, please click here for more. It would also be greatly appreciated if you would like and subscribe. Thanks again.